This school year will be unlike any other. The decisions are not easy.
It's tough because I have to make the decision of, does my child get a proper education or should I risk his life?
Tonight we called in the experts to answer your questions. Whether students are going back to school in person, online, or both, there are still a lot of unknowns, and parents aren't the only ones concerned.
There's still kids I'm really worried about.
Tonight, we thank the educators who have gone above and beyond to make this transition as smooth as possible.
Being able to engage the students and also being able to teach content that is difficult.
Our team of experts is here to help.
Back to school, your questions answered starts right now. Good evening and thank you for joining the special edition of KREM 2 News at 6 tonight. We are devoting most of our time to our special Back to School, Your Questions Answered. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Welcome everyone, I'm Whitney Ward. We are your Back to School information station, and we called in experts here with us tonight to answer your top questions. And we want to encourage you to text in your questions throughout the next hour, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can tonight. And we do want to emphasize, this is important, this is not to debate decisions that have already been made, but instead to give you useful information that you and your family can benefit from.
So text those questions into us at 509-448-2000 and we'll direct your questions to our experts.
So today with us we have three special guests. We have Health Officer Dr. Bob Lutz with Spokane Regional Health District. We also have mental health counselor and author Kristen Sowers, and we have Scott Kerwin, a technology and college readiness expert from Spokane Public Schools. So thank you to all of our guests for joining us tonight. We'll get to our experts here in just a moment, but first it is move-in day for new students at Gonzaga University. This year about 2,000 students are expected to live on campus, which is about 700 fewer than last year.
KREM 2's Amanda Rowley joins us live from the GU campus tonight with what students can expect this year as they prepare for college in the middle of a pandemic. Amanda?
Yeah, good evening, Mark and Whitney. So Gonzaga students who are returning to campus today will be checking in at this location. I'm located just to the west of the Hemmingson Center and on the north side of the McCarthy Athletic Center. Now you can see these tents behind me. The one right over my shoulder here is where students can voluntarily get tested for COVID-19. And then following these lines here is where they have booths set up to check students in and get them their residence hall keys. Now, it's a different process this year and a lot more spread out than years in the past, but it's all for the university's effort to ensure the health and safety of its students during this pandemic.
The moment you walk on Gonzaga University's campus, you'll see signs everywhere reminding you to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. University staff are making sure this message sticks throughout the year, starting today as students move on to campus.
I did not want to start college remotely.
Sarah Bonaparte is grateful to be getting the on-campus experience her first year in college. And so is Mom.
My husband and I are really looking forward to being empty nesters. And of course, we've all been together since March. So I think our kids are happy to get back to school and see their friends.
Hand sanitizer stations are outside every open residence hall, though some halls are set aside for quarantine and isolation spaces if needed.
100% compliance with people wearing masks and trying to be socially distant.
At Hemmingson Center, students are encouraged to take their meals to go. That's why seating areas are now replaced with controlled traffic flow and markers.
They're just a positive message for our students, as they are waiting in line to go and enjoy their breakfast or lunch or dinner.
Outdoor seating is available instead under this tent across from the center. As long as the weather cooperates, it will remain there until October.
We know that COVID will be here, but we also want to take every precaution that we can and allow our students to have as wonderful an experience as they can.
Those precautions are what will make the school year much different than before. Classroom sizes are capped at 15 people, with desks separated 6 feet apart. GU is asking anyone who visits campus to complete a daily self-certification form using the ZAG Check app or online. Voluntary tests are provided by the university at no cost, but it is also implementing contact tracing, random surveillance, and targeted testing to manage COVID-19 on campus.
That we're all in this together and we're all going to do this together.
Now this evening, Gonzaga students are participating in their first orientation activities. You can see quite a bit of movement here on campus, and I've been told that they're in groups of 10 and socially distancing. Now I am pretty impressed. I haven't seen really anybody on campus not wearing a mask. So families and students here today really are taking these new guidelines pretty seriously. Reporting at Gonzaga University, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
All right, Amanda, thank you very much. So from college kids to kindergartners, we know that back to school is here. It is on everyone's mind. So we want to get right to our first guest who is joining us tonight for our special, Dr. Bob Lutz, the Spokane County Health Officer. Dr. Lutz was appointed to that position at Spokane Regional Health in 2008.
Yeah, many of you probably familiar with Dr. Lutz as he's been holding press briefings several times a week throughout the pandemic. So Dr. Lutz, first off, thank you for being with us tonight. I want to start broad. Students in Spokane were sent home back in March, and here we are 5 months later, about to start a new school year virtually. So from your perspective, where do we stand as a community in terms of COVID-19, and is there a reasonable hope that kids will be able to return to in-person classes at some point this year?
Yeah, I think, if you look at where we are now versus where we were, a number of months ago, we know a lot more about COVID-19. And by the same token, the more we know, the more we realize that we don't know. So, right now with all the decisions about back to school and how do you get more students back in person, we've been looking at, for example, the amount of disease in our community. And as you know, we definitely were very concerning just a number of months ago, even not that long ago. What I do take note of is that since the governor's mandate back in July requiring face coverings, we have had a significant both plateauing and then decrease in cases, which is very encouraging. And so I think to your question, can we expect to see students back to more in person? I think time will tell, but I continue to encourage, be very patient, be very cautious, and we just have to be very flexible and dynamic to what happens on the ground.
Dr. Lutz, we've heard from several families tonight. They're planning to kind of form these pods, learning pods, essentially creating these small groups of students and parents to try to navigate this remote learning together. My first question is, do you think that's safe? And do you have any advice on how to do it safely, or maybe some do's and don'ts?
Yeah, I think I've heard a lot about the pods, and I think certainly we know that families and children, I mean, when I go and walk in my neighborhood, I see children playing all the time. And so my hope is that those pods are going to be made of children who have been spending time together. The question is, however, when you bring lots of little people indoors, is that going to increase the risk of infection? And so I think I would strongly encourage, working with families that you've spent time with over the summer months, keeping your group small, definitely a lot of hygiene, washing hands, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of face coverings. A lot of pushback at times, but I think children want to please, and I think if you provide the right messaging, children will wear face coverings, and again, it's a good message for them to be seeing how they're helping others.
Dr. Lutz, one last question here. This kind of goes back to the original question about maybe getting kids back to school and when that may happen. Is there some sort of metric that you're looking for, some number, maybe the positivity rate to reach before kids can go back into the classroom?
Well, the Department of Health created a couple of metrics a couple weeks ago that came out, and so we've been looking at that. So what we've said is that if we have an incidence rate over 2 weeks of more than 75 cases per 100,000, then that again is why I, a number of weeks ago made the strong recommendation that you begin learning remotely. But again, even at that point, we recommended or gave consideration to what we call carve-outs. Certainly support the idea that young learners, those pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, up to maybe second grade, they are going to be challenged by remote learning. And so bring those children back in small, what we call cohorts, kind of keeping them together, pods for another name. When you're between when you're less than 25 per 100,000 over 2 weeks, which is what the Department of Health has identified as a cut point where you could start considering more in-person education. That's the sort of metric that we're looking at. Albeit, what I really want to emphasize is that all of a sudden, if we start seeing 25 per 100,000, that doesn't mean the door is open and we're going to be going back to in-person. It's going to be time, and we really need to be very mindful of how things play out on the ground.
Important reminders for sure. Dr. Lutz, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight as always. We do want to encourage those of you at home to keep texting in those back to school questions throughout the next hour. We've got a team that's working hard right now to answer those questions throughout our show.
Yeah, just text those questions into us at 509-448-2000 and we'll direct your questions to our experts. You can also text the word school to that same number to get the latest information about schools' reopening plans.
We in Spokane have the best parents and the best freshman class. They were optimistic. They were thankful. They gave us grace because we were doing an orientation in a parking lot that we've never held an orientation like that before.
Well, when we return on this special edition of KREM 2 News here at 6, we're going to hear from some of the hardworking teachers like the one you just heard from Shadle Park High School, plus Spokane Public Schools' new superintendent, Dr. Adam Swinyer, tackling how to make digital learning work better than it did last spring. This is Back to School, your questions answered.
Everyone was meant to teach, so homeschooling is kind of a struggle for me.
Timing is a huge concern for parents all over because they have to rearrange their plans and schedules to accommodate not only the pandemic, but also the new learning model for this new school year.
Yeah, it leaves a lot of families just wondering how they're going to make it all work. So I had a chance to sit down today with Dr. Adam Swinyer, the new superintendent of Spokane Public Schools, just to ask some of the most asked questions that we are getting from parents. And his advice really does apply to families not just here in Spokane, but all across the Inland Northwest.
This is a time of year where there's always a little sense of anxiety, the newness of the start of school and new teachers, new content, opportunity to meet new friends. And this is certainly a situation where that's at a level that none of us have ever experienced.
For those parents who are trying to figure out how to balance their work, which they know is going to be happening during the day, and then now kids who may be at home during that time and trying to figure out how to make it work best. What is your advice to those parents who feel like they're juggling right now?
We're working really hard and really emphasizing across the community that this is the moment where we need to come together. And together we can get through this and we can do it. We're really encouraging families as we lead up to this to talk about routines and structures. And where is everybody going to sit, and where's everybody going to do their work, and what's the start of the day going to look like, and what's breakfast going to look like, and all those different pieces that go into our day, just like we would develop routines to get to the bus on time. We think that those are really important things for families to think and to plan through.
As overwhelmed as parents may be right now, what about talking with kids who may be overwhelmed? What should those conversations look like right now?
Engage in those conversations as parents and guardians better understand what it's going to look like, to begin echoing that down to the student so that they can start building a vision and an image in their mind. And a part of that for many of our students is grieving and being frustrated and being nervous and being scared of the unknown. It's so important for families to sit down and talk about what are you hearing, and what scares you, what worries do you have. Sometimes those are really logical, and parents just need to address that some of those things are real and legitimate, and sometimes they are not logical, and it's an opportunity for parents to say to provide that clarification, to say no, that isn't how it is, and this is the reality, and you don't get there with a child unless you sit down and you talk it through.
How is online learning going to be different this fall than it was in the spring?
That's a really important point for parents to have clarity around, and that in the fall there was a lot of autonomy for when kids could engage in the work, and there was a once a week required live meeting that was offered for each course and grade level. And what's so significantly different about this fall is it will be a real-time school day. There'll be a start time, an end time, There'll be routine and a schedule and a structure around each subject area, but there is no question, in-person instruction is the way we want our kids to learn. It is the best way for kids to learn and grow, and we're very eager to get back to that as soon as we possibly can. There's much to grieve about in all this. The first day of school is not going to look like what we wanted it to look like for kindergartners. And the first day of high school is not going to look like what we want it to look like. There's a lot to mourn. And we have to be hopeful, and we have to be positive, and we have to know that this is a moment in time that we didn't choose. And we have to respond to model what positivity looks like and optimism, to model what resiliency looks like. That will only help our kids in this moment, but it'll also show them what it looks like to be a strong community.
I really loved his take on that. I think it's such an important reminder for all of us. Again, we do want to encourage you to keep texting these back to school questions in throughout our hour. We have a team that is working hard to answer those questions for you throughout our show.
Here's how you do it. Just text them to us at 509-448-2000 and we'll direct your questions to our experts. You can also just text the word school to that very same number to get the latest information about schools' reopening plans. All right, coming up after the break, your back to school questions to give you a preview and your weekend forecast. Our Tom Sherry tracking a bit of a cool down.
And throughout the night, we'll be sharing some of the awesome pictures that you've already shared with us on your home setups for your kiddos getting ready for school. We've got some good ones showing how you've turned your home into a classroom. So if you want your pictures to be featured right here, you can share them with us on Facebook. We'll be answering more of your questions right after the break. Welcome back to our Back to School special. Tonight we are happy to be joined by Kristen Sowers. She is a licensed mental health counselor, school district consultant, and an author.
Kristen, first off, thank you for being with us tonight. We've heard from frustrated parents like this one saying all these changes are overwhelming. So as families prepare to navigate virtual learning, what should parents be doing to help our kids emotionally prepare for a very different school year?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. And I think the thing I would say to parents is I understand this is so stressful, and one of the best things we can do for our kids is to keep ourselves regulated and to model that, because our kids need to feel safe and connected and supported, and if we're stressed and anxious, they're going to cue off that. And I think part of what we want to do with our kids is just acknowledge that this is a completely unexpected event that's happened, and we're working really hard to support you. And so let's get some things in check to help you stay regulated so you can be your best self and connect with your kids. Have good conversations about what they're, excited about, what they're worried about, what's been hard for them, what was helpful last year, what was not so helpful, and finding permission to just kind of have those real conversations with them about what do they need from us to feel supported, and what do they need to feel successful in the classroom, and just be open to having those conversations ongoingly.
We also know that all kids handle things really differently. So what are some signs that parents should kind of be looking out for, just so they can make sure and know if their child is starting to struggle?
Another great question. I think one of the things I've learned from all of this is the need for us to be willing to have hard conversations. And having hard conversations don't have to be scary or anger-driven or intimidating. It's just about being able to ask, how are you doing? And I've noticed some changes, and are things going okay? And we need to have that constant open dialogue. And we need to be communicating with the education professionals too about what are you noticing about my child? Is there anything I can do differently? And are you worried about stuff? Or how is this going for you? And I think being open to having those hard conversations is going to invite opportunity to share what they need, and being attuned to what our kids need and how they do their best and be their best selves.
And beyond just maybe concerns about virtual learning, what about socialization? Because I know my kids are 7 and 8 years old. Whitney has young kids as well. They're really missing that socialization with their kids. They really haven't been around their friends, been able to run around with them and play since March. Any advice?
Oh, of course they're missing it. We're social beings by nature, right? So this has been challenging for so many people, and it is hard when they're supposed to be interacting with friends and creating new memories, and that's been affected by this. And the reality is we just have to keep our safety and health first. And so we might have to be creative with how we provide those social opportunities and try and get creative with how we can virtually connect with friends and go back to old-fashioned ways of letter writing or engaging in different kinds of conversation. And I think the reality is we just have to honor that this is really hard, and we just need to work together and be kind to each other and just trust that we're going to get through this.
Thank you so much, Kristen Sowers. We sure appreciate your insight. It's just so important for us to remember all of this. It feels like a lot, but if we kind of break it down bit by bit. Thank you again for taking your time and sharing your insight with us. And again, if you have questions, we want to keep hearing them. So please do send them in. You can text them to us throughout the hour. And again, we've got people behind the scenes working hard to make sure that you get the answers you need right now.
Yeah, just text them to us right now at 509-448-2000 and we'll direct your questions to our experts. You can also text the word school to that very same number to get the latest information about schools' reopening plans.
All right, coming up here in our next half hour, we have more special guests to get to. We are looking forward to talking to Scott Kerwin. He is the Director of Technology and Information at Spokane Public Schools. Also, check out how Nay is going to be doing classes this year. This is a great picture. He's got his own workstation set up, his laptop, his calendar, his whiteboard. So we want to see your photos. How are you getting your kiddos ready? Keep sending them in. You might just see them right here on KREM 2. We'll be right back. From busy playgrounds to crowded cafeterias, from working on group projects to sitting next to your classmates, we know things are going to look different this fall. We'll be replacing the whiteboards with computer screens and doing a whole lot of things online. But one thing that does stay true is the commitment to navigate what is best for our kids.
We are dads and moms to young ones and teens, and brothers and sisters to teachers. We are going through the same process that you all are going through.
Absolutely. Here at KREM, we are making a commitment to you to help answer those tough questions and to get you the information that you need to feel more at ease despite all of this uncertainty. So with that, we just want to welcome you back to our special edition of KREM 2 News here at 6. And if you are just now joining us, we're here tonight to answer all of your biggest back to school questions.
There are a lot of questions. Want to encourage you to text them throughout the hour. We have a team working to answer those questions all throughout this show.
So all you have to do is text them into us at 509-448-2000, and then we'll be able to direct your questions to our top experts. You can also text the word school to that same number and get the latest information about schools' reopening plans.
Tonight we are happy to be joined by Scott Kerwin. He is the Director of Technology and Information at Spokane Public Schools.
So Scott, thank you so much here for being with us tonight. Our first question really has to do with just logistics. A parent wrote in to say tonight that our internet bill has jumped 30%. We just don't think we can financially do it again. They're asking, is there any assistance available for parents who are just struggling to even pay for internet?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. One of the main supports that we're leveraging right now are T-Mobile hotspots. We have a limited amount where families could check them out and use them in their houses that operate off of a cell phone signal. And we're also waiting for OSPI at the state level to use their CARE Act dollars to find a vendor for some internet subsidies there. And we're also entering into a conversation very early with Comcast for Internet Essentials. That's been available, but they've removed some barriers from families, which we're really excited about. And so we have a kind of a menu of options for those families that need that support.
Asking about recommendations to obtain tutoring while learning remotely.
Yeah, it's actually been really nice to be regionally where we are in Spokane and have so many universities, community colleges in our area, because we hear from programs at those colleges that they are willing and want to support, in addition to our student teachers and our teacher ed programs, who also want to support kind of those tutoring options. So usually our structure was AVID as a district program to have college tutors be on site in school buildings, and we're hoping to continue that relationship and those conversations with local colleges to make sure our families and students are supported.
Scott, I know that SPS specifically has made a point to make sure that every student can have the same technology available to them, but we're also hearing from parents who are really concerned about just kids being on screen all day long. You know, keeping them focused is a concern. What is your advice for parents who are feeling those nervous feelings about that?
Yeah, definitely. We are really focused on our learning model within the elementary and secondary school schedule to prioritize live learning in the mornings, but also having options within that live learning to encourage our teachers to have brain breaks, to get up and stretch, to have physical activity involved, so that our students aren't strictly staring at screens for 6 to 8 hours a day, that it's actually, there's breaks and there's just options there for students. We really want to also understand that that is not a best practice for education in general, and we want to make sure that our students and teachers have that opportunity to be free within that structure.
Scott, I know you're not the superintendent, but can I just ask you, a lot of folks are wondering, are my kids going to be graded the same and evaluated the same with virtual learning as opposed to being in the classroom? Is the assessment for moving on to another grade going to be the same as it was in previous years?
We have it's a great question. We have a lot of people at the district level and at the building level really reevaluating the standards within the subject areas that are being taught to prioritize some of those standards and to not really necessarily rely on those maybe historic daily worksheets, but have maybe more project-based learning, cross-curricular opportunities, so an assignment in English can also count in social studies. I'm very excited and proud to be in our district where we have a lot of teachers being creative about that very question, to not require a ton of stuff just for the sake of having schoolwork, but to prioritize depth of knowledge and prioritize students really showing their learning in a lot of different ways.
What is your plan for kind of tracking engagement and attendance for those kids who maybe didn't participate in the spring? What is the plan to kind of keep them engaged in this new platform?
Yeah, I'm really excited that OSPI at the state level has given us broader terms of what attendance and engagement means. Thankfully in our district we have resources in computer programmers, data warehouses to be able to kind of look at that data so that when teachers are teaching live classroom meetings, they can take attendance on students in those meetings. But we know that students aren't going to be able to make every meeting every day. And so whether they're doing classwork in Microsoft Teams or other digital tools like MobiMax or other tools, we'll be able to look at those student level data for active minutes and be able to say, are students calling their teachers? Are they responding to teacher emails? Are they completing assignments in teachers' gradebooks? Are they attending live meetings? All of those things we really want to make sure we understand are all student efforts to engage in their academics.
All right, this next one, Scott, last question, it's a tough one. How do you keep teenagers motivated when they're not even really motivated to be at school when it's in person?
That's the golden question. I think our teachers are really focused on that question perpetually within their content area. How do I make a virtual lesson feel good? And usually that involves having peers work with each other and not have a teacher direct teach and lecture verbally over a virtual meeting, but allow them to work with each other, to be creative and offer, again, a lot of different ways to show their learning, that it's not just repeating a multiple choice worksheet or test. It's showing, like, maybe they created a YouTube video that showed their learning, or maybe they had a survey and created a project on their own with their peers. And I think that's how we get creative and make sure that we engage our students.
Scott Kerwin with SPS. Thank you very much for your time, Scott. All right, coming up, we'll be answering more questions from Dr. Bob Lutz. Keep sending in your questions. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special coverage. We actually want to circle back now to our first guest because we have a ton more questions for Dr. Bob Lutz, the health officer for Spokane Regional Health District.
Yeah, Dr. Lutz, thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. I want to get to another question from one of our viewers. He's asking about riding on school buses because some districts in our area in the county have opted for that hybrid model where students will return to class a couple days a week and then be virtual learning those other days. So how can you maintain any measure of safety on a school bus in that enclosed environment with several kids?
No, yeah, we've worked closely with school districts. There's guidance that's come out from Department of Health with looking at limiting the number of students who are on the buses. We're also looking at, for example, if schools are set up in cohorts or pods, if you will, that we try to encourage those students to sit with each other. If they're traveling with a family member, then they should be sitting next to their family member. So again, yeah, the buses definitely are a concern for us, but I think there are guidance principles in place to try to minimize the risk, acknowledging that those kinds of sort of mixing settings are the ones that we're most concerned about.
Dr. Lutz, I'm curious, how, knowing that all of our districts are kind of doing things differently depending on their sizing and their population of students, how are you advising districts to handle things if a confirmed case is contact traced back to someone at the school?
Yeah, so certainly, you know, irrespective of the size of the school, a case is a case. And so what we have really, and we had a great conversation with superintendents today, we're really strongly encouraging them to come up with, if you will, a team that can provide the information. So we know that this individual has now tested positive. Who is he or she sitting next to? Who are they sitting around? Who are they maybe interacting with throughout the day?